Amazing. So our next set of speakers, Mike, Dan, and Nick are joining. So international group experience facilitators, and they're going to share with us their 16 design aspects framework as a way to successfully create and facilitate experiences for groups from 3 to 800 plus, which sounds really amazing. So Mike, Dan, and Nick, welcome to Into the Miraverse, and thanks for being with us today. The stage is all yours.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. Hi, everyone. I think Mike's going to be bringing up some content. I know.
There we are.
Yes, there we are.
Nick,
all right, thank you. So hey everyone, I'm going to kick things off today, and I'm Nick. As you can see from this scale model diagram, I'm 4 times bigger than Mike and Dan. And I'm also officially Miro's #1 influencer. And I take this very seriously. If ever I catch my friends using other tools that aren't Miro, they're not my friends anymore. So my background is in software engineering, but these days I'm a consultant. My topics are software architecture, technology strategy, building good teams in that area. But what's interesting about today's session is related to when I met Mike and Dan a couple of years ago. So they taught me a lot about designing and facilitating great workshops, and a very different way of thinking to what I was used to in the past, and they've given me some new tools and techniques. So over the past couple of years working with Dan and Mike, I've seen how they've evolved their content and they've built these 16 design aspects. And I think it's an excellent model for thinking about how to design workshops. And I think it's important for today's session because if you want to create reusable Miro templates, first you have to design good workshops for one group of people. Have to create something that can work in one situation. In software engineering and software architecture, we have a concept called use before reuse. If you want to create something reusable, as I was just saying, you have to create something usable once first. You can't skip ahead to a perfect solution that solves every problem. And so when Miro contacted me about doing a session today, I was thinking around other topics, around some other workshop, other templates. And I thought, actually, the 16 design aspects from Dan and Mike, I feel that's the most interesting and useful concept. And I think it can be beneficial to anyone who uses Miro, especially Miro-verse content creators. So Dan, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So we do have some instructions here for ways you can participate with us, and we're going to put up some instructions in a minute that you're seeing these emojis. So when you see the thinking face emoji, there'll be a question for you to think about. So just take that time on your own to just think about the answer and just get that to pop into your mind. And then when you see the keyboard, that's going to be when you need to enter into chat on the main stage the answer that you have. And we'll do that twice with 2 different questions. So let's get started. So the first thing to think about is this. So the last time that you hosted or designed something, so that could have been in Miro, or it could be elsewhere. It could be in another digital tool, perhaps, if they do exist. I don't know, Nick, if that's allowed, but it could be in real life. You know, it could be in person somewhere. But think about what that was. You hosted something or you designed some event in Miro or elsewhere. What was it? Just capture that in your mind, but don't do anything with it yet. Just make sure you got it. I'll give you another 20 or 30 seconds or so just to think of something.
Cue the folk music, right, Ethan?
Yeah. Okay, has everyone got something? Hopefully you know what that is. Right. So now you have it, put it in chat. So we'll give you another 30 seconds or so now just to drop something in chat. The last time you hosted something or designed something in Miro, what was that? Let's see what we got. Okay. So thanks to those who are hot off the blocks with their answers. And as you see everyone coming in there with their answers, just have a scan over, see what you're seeing in the chat, and notice the the difference in the diversity and the number of different things that people are working on, or some of the similarities you're seeing as well?
A lot of different things.
Wow. Murder mystery floor
A
plan.
lot of hosting.
Yeah. Okay, this is useful. Right. Now, don't forget what you put in chat, because you're going to need that in a minute. So what you can see now on the screen is the 16 design aspects, the thing you've all been waiting for. Just have a very quick glance at that. We're not going to explain anything more at this stage. Just have a quick look. If you're still typing in chat, go for it. You'll have a chance to see this picture again in a moment, but just have a quick glance. Now, as you're looking at these 16 design aspects, these 16 topics of conversation, as best as you can remember, which of these aspects speaks to where you started in your journey? When you did your work, where did you start? So think about that. Just take a moment to scan over. It's going to take a little bit longer, so we'll give you another 30 seconds now just to think of something. And then, okay, I think it's time to chat. Here we go. So, time to type. So, as best as you can remember, which of these aspects speaks to where you started? Just find the one that says something about where you think you started your design work. And again, if you've already answered or you're waiting to answer, just have a look over in chat and see what's coming up. Where are people saying that they started? Where are they landing mentally on this?
I can appreciate Graham's comment, not knowing what these are. We
Yeah.
didn't share a lot yet, that's for sure.
Don't know enough yet to be dangerous, but just which ones speak to you just from the words you can see. And thanks to those of you that are answering. This is wonderful stuff. Okay. Okay, Mike, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can take us through where we started.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. And, given that, Nick is the maybe unofficially designated Miro spokesperson fanboy, one of the reasons, that we've kind of shared and been here today is that Miro is often the center of our tool universe. And how we use Miro is very much a place of doing our work together and collaborating, and then using some of the apps that we can integrate into and also go in and out of Miro in the cases where we're designing different group experiences. And so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time here just sharing our journey through the design aspects in creating this 30 minutes with all of you. So in terms of the design aspects and how we use Miro, you can see those 16 in this top corner. And what we do is we give a frame to each of the design aspects along with the prompts that we've developed to start these design conversations. And it's very nonlinear. You kind of gravitate where you start, as many of you started in different places or still considering what these are. And as we get deeper into these different design aspects, completing the prompts, having the discussions that we need to have as a team, we are creating content. So actually getting closer to production. So the slides you're seeing, and we're not doing presentation mode, we're kind of literally navigating you through it. So you might spy some of the instructions we have for each other in this board too. We're creating that content. And that brings us to this moment. So as we keep moving forward here, here's a few of the places where we started using the design aspects. And so immediately when Nick rang us up and we got on a call together, we really started talking about our framing. What were our hopes for you as an audience? And we were hoping to prompt you to think a little bit more about your design practice, maybe going a little bit deeper and having some tools to do that, and building some curiosity around these 16 design aspects. So that was our initial framing, our goals for you. From there, once we were connected in with Miro, the Miro folks, the wonderful team supporting all of this work today at Miroverse, we got into the basic environment. How much time do we have? Well, we heard 30 minutes, which really became about 26 minutes once we got into getting in and getting out and you moving on to your next session. And we knew there'd be hundreds of people here. We also knew it'd be more of a broadcast style with some interaction with the chat, which we're appreciating, and that we have different levels of users and creators in Miro. So those were the basics. That's what we knew going in. And that gravitated us very much to closer to production. We often think of this as an ecosystem. So if the framing and the basic environment were the soil and nutrients of our design aspects, these ones that you're seeing on the screen are really the flora and fauna, kind of the things that fit in all those detailed pieces. And so we really jumped in on the timing, the roles, and the detailed logistics to make sure we were crisp with the time we had. We knew who was doing what across ourselves, across with Miro, and really delving into those roles. Once we had those things all settled, we said, okay, so when we get into these other elements of the design aspects, the climate and landscape, that experience in that environment, we really zeroed in on solidifying what was going to be the arc of our time together, this conversation, right? Part presentation, you're going to get to participate in a minute. The art of questions, we're going to pose some questions to you, some prompts. What's the work they're going to do and helping us as a group get a better sense of how these design aspects in Miro work. We're going to allow for some individual and collective thought, and we're going to invite some dissent with all these things. And so fundamentally, that led us to our arc of the conversation. I know as we abruptly started, we did have a little check-in question that maybe in our roles we needed to hammer out a little bit better amongst ourselves and with Miro, but we were curious about why you came to this session today. We didn't get a chance to ask that, but we invite you to put that in chat if you'd like. Then we spent a little bit of time talking about where did you start with your design the last time you did something. Then we shared a little bit about how we actually designed the session using the design aspects and, a little bit of a level of detail. But at this juncture, what we want to do is kind of turn this over to all of you and Nick to hear a little bit about what you're thinking about now. And Nick's got a little exercise teed up with you.
Cheers, Mike. So for the final part of today's session, I'm going to give you a chance to share your thoughts on a brief introduction to the design aspects. For this activity, I decided to pick a template from the Miroverse, this radar here. And this is also a good and better example, again, of how you can combine the Miroverse templates with the design aspects. You can use the design aspects to think about what's the framing of your session, what's the story arc, how will you create, where will you try and grow relatedness, where might you invite dissent, and you can look at the Miroverse and try and find some templates that have already solved that problem for you. So this one here, this radar, I thought this one was, I wasn't exactly sure about how I wanted this part of the workshop to look. I knew what we wanted to do here, but we weren't sure how it looked. So I looked through the Miroverse. I spent around 10 or 15 minutes or so, and I thought, yeah, that radar, that's the one I think that's going to best fit here. So we took the radar and we adjusted the questions in each quadrant. And I also liked the concentric circles because this gives us now 2 dimensions. We've got the different questions you can answer, and we've also got the strength of your feeling. So the closer to the center is the stronger feeling. So we're going to give you some time now to add your thoughts onto the big radar, which is next to this on the Miro board. You can answer any one of the questions or multiple questions if you want to. And I'm going to get things started. So for me, I'm intrigued by dissent. I'm always intrigued. How can I'm going to add this on the Miro board in real time. How can I get more diverse perspectives and potentially even some conflict in a safe and a constructive manner? So yeah, for me, dissent is an interesting one. So I'll give you a couple of minutes now to add your thoughts on here. Try and add at least one. If you want to add multiple, that's also fine. And then once that's done, we'll scan through your responses and start responding to them. So I'll put a 2-minute timer. There we go.
Thanks, Nick.
I can already see a number of responses being added, which is great. If you want to take a bit more time and think about this, that's also fine. There's no rush here.
I also wanted to take a minute as people are kind of responding to that. I saw that Paul had a comment in chat about, wouldn't you start with something like goal or purpose, or maybe that's a given before these design aspects. And so, Paul, to give you a little bit more color and the rest of the audience, framing for us is kind of that element of goal or purpose, but it's a little bit of blending outcomes and experience. So some of the prompts in there kind of cover in that framing. So maybe a different view of framing or goal or purpose. So thanks again for that question. Look at it, it's all filling up, people buzzing around. Happy to zoom in here a little. Others can too.
So we have just under a minute to go. If you want to put some comments in the chat about other people's questions and responses, feel free to do that. If there's anything from other people's responses that you agree with or surprise you, yeah, feel free to drop a comment.
Carl, I see your question about is the radar from Miro the tool. The radar is from the Miroverse, so it's a template. So it was an element we decided to include, an activity, if you will, in our design aspects.
I've noticed a question here about, do you always have to work through all the 16 aspects? And the answer is no, and you don't have to do them in any particular order, but it is a great guide that we find can be there to refer to see what might be missing. You might decide that maybe something isn't particularly relevant, but it's a guide to check in with yourself.
All right, thank you, Dan, and thank you to everyone who's responded. Where do we start? Well, I like people with strong opinions, so I'm going to go straight into the middle, right into the heart of the diagram next to my face. Someone's put one on my head, so I'm going to start there. So I'm intrigued by how to get engagement from diverse stakeholders. Very interesting question. This came up in a meetup I was in last week, and there's a lot of different aspects to this. I think we even started to debate actually what is engagement, and does everyone need to be engaged? Is it okay if some people just think quietly to themselves and respond afterwards? And I think that's also a good thing to think about when you're thinking about growing relatedness and framing and what happens after the workshop, the post experience. Do you want all of the thinking and conversation to happen in the workshop? Does there need to be engagement, or can it come afterwards? Obviously, if you do want engagement in the workshop, then various design aspects touch on that, like tools, growing relatedness, dissent can be a good one. Getting people to, if you can get people to share their dissent, then that might spark others into conversation too. So yeah, lots of different ways to do that. I'm intrigued by perspective. I guess talking around framing there. I'm intrigued by dependencies. Maybe you could add a comment on the chat about that one, or add some more thoughts around dependencies. I'm not entirely sure which kind of dependencies you're referring to there, I'm sorry, but definitely happy to talk about that. I'm intrigued by the design aspects and their meaning and examples for each. Definitely understand that one. We just gave a quick introduction today. There's going to be a link to Dan and Mike's website where you can learn more about these things. We also did a talk about these recently at NDC London. There's a video for that. I'm intrigued by how can I get a diverse set of perspectives? Great question. So in my experience, one of the ways I would probably do that is I would probably go to the design aspect of the pre-workshop experience. I'd be thinking about sending out a questionnaire or having some one-to-one interviews before the workshop, so I can understand what different opinions are out there and maybe start having conversations with those people or surfacing conversations in those ways. We do like to use questionnaires a lot. All right, let's go to I'm unsure about in the center. I'm unsure about how to apply this in a real world example. So I guess there's different aspects to that. in my experience, having learned from Dan and Mike, I got to actually work with them. I got like some one-to-one coaching and training. So I was quite lucky in that respect. But I've also done workshops afterwards where I wasn't working with Dan and Mike, with my own clients directly. And I think you can just try, one approach is just to try different bits at different times. So, you know, if you've got a workshop maybe tomorrow or next week, just pick a couple of the design aspects as a starting point, maybe. Just think about which of these things am I not using very often, and maybe start with those. I'm unsure about clear alignment of purpose. So I'm just trying to unpack that one. I'm wondering if you could apply a bit more context in the chat, maybe. You can come back to that one. Okay, I'll move on to this one for now. How to spur and facilitate constructive dissent. So we've definitely done that a few times. I could tell you a story, but it would probably take 5 minutes. But basically what we did was we used a questionnaire, an anonymous questionnaire, and then we put the responses onto the Miro board. And we color-coded the responses. So if it was a number 5, that means I strongly agree. We left it green. If it was 1 or 2, we made it red. And if it was 3, we made it orange. 3 or 4 was orange. And so this way, we had the team were able to express their dissent to leadership, but leadership didn't know where the comments came from. And we used color coding to make it visually stand out, so like a heat map. Here's where people disagree with certain managerial choices. But yeah, when to do that and how to do that, I guess a lot of that comes through practice and knowing your group. After that workshop, the program manager said to us, he said, guys, next time we do a workshop with the teams, everything has to be all greens and 5s. So he wasn't quite ready for that dissent. But over the next couple of weeks, he opened up more to that. So it's a process. Okay, I'm going to move on to another quadrant now. Oh, sorry.
I was going to add one bit to inviting dissent. That is also quite coupled with the art of questions, because sometimes it's really a matter of what is it that you want that opportunity for a little bit of disagreement, seeing different perspectives and asking questions. You know, what's the work a question is going to do for the group, and the good of the goal, the desired outcome, as I saw somebody had commented on as well. Sorry, Nick, go for it. Back to you.
All right, so let's move on to the bottom 2 now. We have about how many minutes left, sorry, for this exercise? I lost count.
Probably a couple more minutes, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we got time then. Great. So I want to try the learning from today in practical activities. Definitely a good idea. Just trying out the design aspects. I think you'll grasp them a bit quicker than you might have anticipated, maybe. I want to try your process steps. So I think that the steps that Mike and Dan went through is kind of a nice, sensible default. Think about your framing, a basic environment, and that's kind of a foundation for the other things that come next. I want to try making games like synthesis on here. Maybe the design aspects can help you with that. Yeah. Feel free to post any more follow-ups in the comments around that one if you want us to discuss that more. Okay, so finally, for the last couple of minutes, we'll go to I'd like to ask. I'd like to ask, if you were to get someone started, are there 3 to 4 you would have a newbie start with? I guess that kind of goes back to my previous answer. Probably the main ones are think about the framing, think about the basic environment, think about the on and off experience. And probably my personal one would be the questions. I think asking good questions can really make a huge difference in a workshop. Different question formats like complete the sentence makes things more interesting, like we've done here. Using the ethnographica deck to ask people to respond to questions using visual images makes a big difference. So yeah, I'd pick those 4. I'd like to ask how to get input from quiet people. Yeah, so for us, that's the questionnaire. And I guess this is one of those situations where we've had to supplement Miro with additional tools. We want people to respond to the question. So during a meeting or workshop, we ask people to respond to a questionnaire. We give them 5 minutes, it's all in silence. And then we get the responses from the questionnaire, we paste them into Miro, and Miro has a great integration where if you just paste a spreadsheet into Miro, it will convert them into Post-its. So yeah, I would say questionnaires is a great way to get input from quiet people. I've seen that working many times. Okay, one final question. What are the key questions you use for each frame? I guess that's one for Dan and Mike. I'll hand over to you guys with that final question.
Dan, do you want to get us started?
So I'm just trying to find that sticky. I can get the context. Where is it? Going there for that one.
Yeah. What are the key questions you use for each frame?
The key questions, right? So there's probably 3 to 5 questions that we have for each aspect. I think that's how I'm going to interpret that. And we haven't shared them all here. But if you take framing, for example, you might sort of summarize that one as, and some people mentioned outcomes. If I use an example for framing, I would say, what do you want to be different by the time your attendees leave, or your participants leave the session, or the room? What do you want to be different for them? So there'll be a question like that, or a key question associated with each aspect, up to 4 or 5.
Yeah, and I guess adding to that and rounding it out, I would say that it's really just that matter of some of these different questions, even like roles, or what roles are we playing in the design, or what roles are we playing in the actual presentation, like among Nick, myself, Dan, as well as the team at Miro. So all of these have a set of prompts that help to follow how to navigate through them. And by Natalie's appearance, I'm guessing we're drawing to a close. We planned for that. So, Dan.
Here we are. So yeah, we're in the last minute or so of the session, and we've had hundreds of people here today, many questions about the aspects, of a very brief glimpse. But our final invitation to you is, if you want to find out more, we have an offer. And that is, if you go to the link that we're dropping into the chat, you can go and fill out the form at the contact page for 1.5 Studios, and we will do a draw tomorrow that will pick out one response, and that person will get a free live 1-hour coaching consultation with us to learn more about the aspects. And as we've mentioned today, we're probably going to be starting with basic environment, framing, and the arc of conversation that you want to build around your session. So yeah, fill out the form, and we will look forward to meeting one lucky winner from that response. Natalie.
3 people, Dan.
Oh,
3 people.
Three. Oh, sorry, yeah, we're going to draw 3 people.
There's 3 of us. There'll be 3 of you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Mike, Dan, and Nick, for sharing your knowledge and for applying this to your Into the Miroverse experience. That was very insightful. And I hope that everyone has learned so much from all of our speakers. And it's hard to believe, but we are already coming to our final session, but hopefully an extra fun one for all. So we are going to celebrate our Miroverse creators finally.